to Getting Strange, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. We've been off for a while, but now we're back. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And one news thing we've probably got straight away is people keep insisting there's a new X-Files series imminent.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of it from that interview with Gillian Anderson a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, where they sort of asked her... It's an 8... I watched it. It's an 8-minute interview, and it's mostly about the film she's promoting, and at the end they say, can I ask you about the X-Files? And she says, I don't know anything. It's like, maybe when the reboot happens, maybe call her, and that's the best anyone's got from her.
She didn't even really confirm the reboot was going ahead, to be honest.
No, she's heard about the same thing we have.
Yeah.
So she didn't know any further than that.
Yeah, but even I went to a kind of board game convention a couple of weeks ago, and I was speaking to a guy about the X-Files on one of the stalls, and he was adamant that there was a new series starring Gillian Anderson. It was coming out, and I don't know where this rumour's come from.
No, I mean, we had that one back in February where people was just, there was going to be a one-off special thing in February.
Yeah.
And that just never happened. But the weird thing about the guy at the con was it sounded like he was describing season 10 and that season 11 hadn't happened.
Yeah.
That was really odd because I have to say...
He claimed he was a huge fan, though.
I know, so...
I didn't want to disagree with him in case he knew something I hadn't heard about. But, I came home, had a look into this. I can't find anything.
No. The last thing, as far as we're aware in continuity, and we haven't even looked at the thing yet, is Perihelion, is the last thing that's happened.
Yeah.
There's been nothing since then.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
But do we have any other news?
I thought I'd just give a little update since it's been a few weeks since we last did a podcast. Sorry, that's my fault. I caught a terrible cold and you wouldn't want me sneezing. If you listen to any of my recent streams, you'll know how rough I've sounded. But yeah, because I can't remember where we left this last time we talked about FileFest. This is FileFest, the huge X-Files fan convention. It's August 29th and 30th this year. I have been saying the wrong location, sorry. I think I've been saying it's in the Mall of America, which was last year's one. It's actually the Heritage Center at the Brooklyn Center in Minnesota. And just to give a quick update of the confirmed guests you've got there, apologies if I mispronounce any of their names, because I'm bad at this, but there's Kristen Cloak, Glenn Morgan, Darren Morgan, John O'Hurley, Chris Carter, Annabeth Gish, Brendan Beezer, Veronica Cartwright, Claudia Gray, Pat Shipper, Anne Simon, Nicholas Lee, Arlene Pleggy, Mitch Pleggy, Laurie Holden, Chris Owens, Sarah Jane Redmond, Larry Musa, and Jeff Gulker all confirmed to be in attendance. So you've got a good kind of mixture of X-Files, actors, writing team, directors, authors. It's a good mixed bag this year.
It would be good to go see it, but don't think we can afford to.
Unless anyone wants to send us there.
We promised to be nice. So we should probably get to the episodes, and I was going to try and be more upbeat, but unfortunately you've chosen to try and be more upbeat about Jump the Shark. You
did promise you were going to be more upbeat.
I'll try and keep
you were going
to
be
level.
Positive about the X-Files this week.
Can I be, in all good conscience?
You're going to try?
I'm going to try. So, Jump the Shark was directed by Cliff Bowl, written by John Gilnett, being John...
have you forgotten their names? Has it been that long?
John Shaban,
yeah,
Frank Spotnitz,
yeah,
and Vince Gilligan.
Correct.
And first broadcast on the 21st of April 2002. Technically, there are guest stars in this episode, but we've been over them ad nauseum, because you know these people. They are the Lone Gunmen, plus 3 other people, one of which I quite like. 2 of which I don't. And Morris Fletcher, Michael McKean, doing his thing again.
It's always good to see Morris back.
It is. And this is his last appearance in the series, as far as I'm aware.
I think so, yeah. So, would you like to give us a synopsis of Jump the Shark?
Okay, from Wikipedia. Morris Fletcher is on a boat in the Bahamas, where he is accosted by armed men and his vessel is blown up. When he is rescued and detained, he approaches the FBI agents, Reyes and Doggett, with information related to the super soldiers in exchange for his release. Doggett and Reyes in turn to Lone Gunmen, when Fletcher provides an alleged photo of the super soldier, whom the gunmen recognise as Eves Adele Harlow. Gunmen refuse to believe the evidence, especially when they find out Fletcher provided it, although the agents continue to pursue the trail. Meanwhile, Harlow murders a biology professor, cuts out an organ and disposes of it in a furnace. After the gunmen capture her, she reveals that he had been experimenting with the immune system of sharks and had been grafting pieces of shark into his body in order to become a living host to a biological weapon. His research had been funded by Harlow's arms-dealing father, who had commissioned Fletcher to find her and prevent her from stopping his biological terrorism plot. She further informs them that there is another host who she's trying to identify and locate before he can unleash the deadly payload. Once Fletcher realizes that he has been used by Harlow's father, he teams up with the gunmen to help her find the second bioterrorist. After a few false starts and chases, the gunmen corner the bioterrorist with only a few minutes before his virus is due to be released. They realize they lack the time to destroy the virus-filled organ and therefore pull a fire alarm, causing large emergency doors to seal shut, simultaneously containing the virus and entrapping them with it. Their sacrifice earns them a final resting place in Arlington National Cemetery, where Doggett, Reyes, Harlow, Scully, Skinner, and Jimmy Bond pay their respects to them.
The end?
The end. Oh.
Positive. Right.
Positive.
Find something positive to say.
Michael McKean is good. Michael McKean is actually is basically. I think you can't really go wrong with Michael McKean. He seems to be put him in something and he'll be fine.
He's always really enjoyable, even if he's playing a comedic role like Fletcher or a deadly serious one like Chuck in Better Call Saul.
Yes, it's nice. It's nice that Jimmy is here.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say we haven't seen Jimmy for a while, but obviously we haven't seen Jimmy since Lone Gunmen.
Yes, he's very much tied up with that series. So he continues to be a weirdly entertaining character who is just a douchebag hacker, really, but he's still entertaining.
Yeah.
I would also say it's nice Gillian Anderson was in the episode at all.
Right at the end. And Mitch Pileggi for that matter.
Mitch Pileggi. I think it feels like they could get Mitch Pileggi for a day and Gillian Anderson for half a day to explain how little they're in this.
Yeah.
And I would say I liked all the sharks. The sharks were good.
The episode, of course, takes its title from Happy Days,
yes.
The notorious Fonzie jumping the shark on water skis scene.
Yes, but a far less, not as funny a reference as Arrested Development's Jump the Shark, where they actually
Henry Winkler do it.
Henry Winkler jumping over a shark for no actual good reason.
Yeah. But the term Jump the Shark, of course, is often used to relate to a series that is kind of past its best and now relying on ridiculous, often comedic moments to carry it.
Yeah, and if we can venture off of the positivity bend, I say it's a weird title.
Chris Carter maintains it's deeply ironic because in his eyes, The X-Files never dips in quality. He said it was good quality and it never jumped the shark up to its very end.
I'll give him that it never does hit the jump the shark moment. I would reserve judgment for watching the final episode of season 10 again, which I feel I could make a case that was jumping the shark. That cliffhanger at the end of season 10.
I think technically speaking, you could argue that this episode jumped the shark, given the outlandish nature of the, I almost said alien virus, but not the engineered terror attack.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I can put aside the positivity, because I've tried. It's
yeah,
not
you got
easy.
some positive in that, yeah.
But this is not easy. It's kind of like from minute one, this episode has just weirdness in it.
True.
But I mean, it's why I kind of lose track of things. I mean, it's something the X-Files has suffered from for quite a lot of time. Is Morris is on a speedboat with some model companion who's a quarter of his age.
That's very Morris, though.
It's very Morris, but still. Anyway, the point is though that he gets accosted by some random guys who blow up his boat with him on it.
Yeah.
And he's then rescued and asks for the FBI, specifically the X-Files. We then find out that this was all a front. Why did they do that?
It's even with his unconvincing blueprints he tries to give them.
Yeah.
Which is the blueprints for the Jupiter 5 from Lost in Space.
Eagle 2. It's something from Lost in Space, isn't it?
It's the Jupiter, yeah. Apparently, that was devil of a job to get it because that actually is the blueprint of the Jupiter 5 as well, and they had to get the permissions to use it.
I like that. It's a good joke, but it's still... Why did they show the boat being blown up? Because you don't actually have to go through with all that.
No, it was, again, for the benefit of the audience, more so than it actually making sense in plot.
Yeah, but it gives the impression that the episode's been rewritten at some point, and nothing's been quite squared away in the same way it should be.
Interestingly, we should possibly talk about the history of this episode in the fact that they had to fight to make it.
Yeah, and well, yes, I was going to say there's a big thing to be said about this is the second time we've done something like this, and it hasn't worked either time, but...
Millennium is what you're referring to.
I'm going for Millennium.
But yeah, it's because after the critical flop that was the Lone Gunmen, Fox hated them, and Fox actually mandated that they couldn't focus on the Lone Gunmen anymore. That's why they've had, I think, 4 cameos a series, and they've always been very, very brief. So they wanted to do something, if they can't use the Lone Gunmen, they basically wanted to send them off, and also wanted to wrap up the Lone Gunmen series. And they had to fight tooth and nail to get the permission to do so, just because Fox was so dead set about it. I think it was someone like Bruce Harewood put, it's the fact that Fox didn't even want to give them enough time on camera to kill them off.
I mean, ultimately I would have preferred that.
And the episode has remained controversial both with fans and with the staff, because Vince Gilligan in particular believes they shouldn't have done it.
Oh, I'm really with him on this one.
However, the Lone Gunmen themselves really liked this send-off for their characters, so there is some kind of dissension there in the ranks anyway.
I mean, that's kind of laudable. Where it kind of falls apart is we do so with a benefit of hindsight, and we know that they're not done somehow.
Silicon Heaven!
We're not talking about that yet. Even before Silicon Heaven, we're going to have to tangle with them again.
Yep.
Which is just baffling.
It should be noted as well that before the season 10 was actually released, there is the comic book continuation season 10 in which they're not dead.
Yes. And we'll get to that when we get to season 10 because, yeah, I'm actually, from what you've told me, I haven't read it yet, but from what I've heard, I like how they're getting around the problem.
Yeah, but season 10 does have problems. I don't entirely like the way the season 10 comic, I should say, wraps up. But I do prefer the season 10 comic to the season 10 TV series. I would have been more interested to see an adaptation of that. And I do really like how they bring the Lone Gunmen back in that series too.
Hooray. So that to look forward to.
Yeah.
But we were kind of talking about Millennium again. And I understand the impulse that's got to exist there of we haven't been able to wrap up our TV series because it's been cancelled. And no one's interested in giving us another shot. We theoretically... Millennium was more of a sort of a weird dodge because the two series had not, aside from Jose Chung, they were completely separate things. They weren't actually interacting with each other. Jose Chung was the weird bridge.
Yeah.
And the only reason I think it ever worked. So I can see Millennium didn't work because we viewed Millennium as just purely X-Files, and it's Lance Henriksen is kind of the guest star of the week, but there's a whole lot of extra characters around him who don't make any sense to us. We don't know who they are. We do not care what's going on with them.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine what it's like for an X-Files fan watching this episode without the Lone Gunman. Because it's like, who the hell is she? Who is he? Why do any of you care about either of them? More to the point, though, because I think we were saying all the way through the episode, is it doesn't explain what on earth happened at the end of the Lone Gunman series.
How they got out of that really, really dramatic cliffhanger.
Yes, and on top of that, where I think this episode really falls apart for me as well is there's a whole thing of Morris Fletcher needs to find Eves again. And you just go with that. You captured her at the end of that episode and then lost her?
Apparently so.
And then Jimmy's been following around the world?
Literally around the world.
And it's that she's basically untraceable and Jimmy has been tracing her.
What are you saying about Jimmy?
He's too stupid to live. We've been over this. The man is just a monster.
Yeah.
Well, not even a monster. He's a slice of bread on legs.
Oh, I like that description of him. But yeah, somehow the village idiot has managed to track her down.
Yeah, and that just feels so baffling that Jimmy Bond can follow around the world, but Morris Fletcher, it's not entirely clear who he works for at this point. Because, as they say, everything he says is a lie. So whether he's with the Department of Defense or a private contractor, who knows?
Yeah.
All those resources can't track one woman, but Jimmy Bond can.
Sure. It's not like the Department of Defense has a lot of things at their disposal.
Yeah.
Disposal. It's not like the Department of Defense has a lot of things at their disposal.
And we get to, I think we alluded to it a lot in the Lone Gunmen episodes, was we get a revelation here that's kind of worthless.
Hmm.
Like, Eve's true name. They've been teasing that for a while, but and I think I said to you when we were doing Lone Gunmen is, unless it's someone else's surname, it means nothing.
What was her name again?
Louise Muntz.
I thought it was Lois.
Lois Muntz.
Lois Muntz. I'm just going to run it through an anagram checker and see if I can get anything out of it. Just keep talking, I'll be doing this in the background.
But, I kept saying, unless it's a surname of someone else in the series, it will mean absolutely nothing to anyone. It's a name. You could have picked any name in the world, and it would be just as relevant.
Yeah.
Lois Runce, sorry.
Runce.
Lois.
Yeah.
Runce.
Runce. Runce.
Yeah.
Okay, using an online anagram solver,
Go on.
I can give you the words enclosure or reclusion from her name, so it's not quite Lee Harvey Oswald, if that is also an alias.
But it strikes you as that's possibly how they got the name?
Possibly, yeah. It is. It's strange, and it does. Other than the fact it's kind of an ugly sounding name, apologies if anybody called Lois Runce actually listens to this, for a very attractive character.
And I think that's the entire reason behind it, isn't it? That's the...
Well, Runce doesn't have, like, supermodel kind of qualities to it.
No.
Not like Eve's Harlow, or whatever she's called previously.
Which had an exoticism to it. But at the same time, people have terrible names. I mean, this is why a lot of film stars and pop stars don't use their actual names on stage. Because Madonna, I can't remember what Madonna's real name is, but it's not Madonna, that's for sure.
I know you often see people with names that might be harder to pronounce simplify their surname or something like that. Or, of course, you have the equity issues of you can't have two actors with the same name or something like that. Or it's looked down upon, you're supposed to try and give yourself a unique moniker.
Exactly. That's part of why some other people are called different things. But hiding Lois Runce from us for so long means nothing.
It's like the fantasy trope of having a character in a mask.
Yes.
Is the main reason you would have a character hide their faces because the audience would recognise them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the man in the iron mask writ large. The whole reason he's in the iron mask is if you saw what he looked like, that's going to cause problems for you.
I guess your other thing would be if they were disfigured like the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, there's two ways of doing it, but...
But primarily, if you hide someone's identity with a mask or a hood or something like that, it's because it would give away a spoiler if you recognise them.
Yeah.
So ditto, if Eves was hiding her name, you'd realise something like it's because she's the daughter of the President of the United States or something like that if you'd heard her surname. I can't remember who the president was at this time. Would it be Bush?
It's Bush at this period.
So if she was Lois Bush or something... wait a second. That's an incredibly common name.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So it's frustrating, and they kind of play it off like a revelation because Morris is really, really happy that he can tell that to them, and they don't believe him. And Jimmy walks in 30 seconds later and tells them the same information, which is just also annoying.
Well, of course, Jimmy can get it easier than the hackers.
Yeah. But then it is kind of notable that basically it does feel like there was meant to be another season here, because we get this reveal that Eve's father is a bioterrorist. It's like, what? Where did this come from?
Well, it came from Jump the Shark.
It did, but this wasn't being alluded to, because we had, was it the Captain Toby show, where they had the strange inference that the CIA knew who she was and knew something about her.
Yeah.
And that didn't go anywhere.
Well, I guess that could be this.
It could be this, but then your father being a bioterrorist, is it that it should be more personal than that, shouldn't it?
But you'd think that if it's a known factor that her father's a bioterrorist, there'd be bigger tabs on her.
Yes.
It's right or wrong. If someone's direct family is a terrorist, you'd be keeping tabs on the immediate family.
They're a weak point, a possible point of influence or something else that you can assume is. Yeah, the daughter of a terrorist isn't allowed to sort of wander around freely, usually.
I guess it infers he's massive as well, so are you going on the basis of Osama bin Laden's daughter or something like that on this?
It's hard to think of a real-world equivalent. I don't think there is an instance you could point to in real life where this happens.
No. Well, that we know of as non-CIA operatives.
Well, yeah, but then... Yeah. But then, it's still... Eve's character, we've noted as well in Lone Gunmen, was just all over the place, given she sort of started off as mercenary with Heart of Gold, and then just turned into generic saviour woman. And now she's just doing that again. But she's murdering people.
Mm.
And that was that also felt like they needed to take more time over it with Eves wouldn't kill anyone. Yeah, I totally murdered that guy and cut out his heart. Okay,
True.
shark organ, but still.
The whole plot with the virus, I can't get round, to be honest.
No, it's just...
It's one, when they find this kind of organ made out of cartilage, shark cartilage that's been implanted on people. All I kept thinking about was Travellers.
Yes, it's a second time we've said, why isn't this wiring back into Travellers again?
Because it's a lot like, do they call it something like xenotransplantation in Travellers?
Yeah.
Where he's got like an insect that's been implanted into his gullet, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not exactly the same, but you could say that this was kind of further applications of this science. Secondly, how do viruses work? Because I'm pretty sure this isn't how viruses work.
I mean, there's a lot to get into. I mean, for one thing, it's not normally bright, luminous liquid that you throw up.
Yeah,
Which
it
was
the
very weird effect.
like phosphorants, like a deep sea creature, wasn't it?
And I get what they're going for there, but that's not generally how you do it. But I think we both had the same conclusion when the Lone Gunmen pull the fire shutters down. It's, you sure there's no vents going into that room? There's no air conditioning. Nothing. There's no way that...
It could be vacuumed if it is a fire safety thing, but it's a very small area to kind of cut off like that.
Yes, to have fire doors that precise.
That are within like maybe 10 feet of each other.
Yeah, it felt off.
But at the same time, the way viruses work, I'm going to go back. There was a very well-received BBC documentary back when I was a teenager, which showed how a bioterrorist could cause a smallpox outbreak in London.
Yeah.
Which was done all realistically. It was just, patient zero infecting himself, crawling away and holding himself up in a place where a lot of people would be passing, where they'd slowly die, but by the time they passed away, after a few days, they would have infected thousands of people walking past. That's a lot more graceful and elegant than the way it's done in this X-Files episode, where essentially it's a biological time bomb. I mean, you could have the same effect, and the same result, because either way you're killing the host.
Oh, yeah.
Without essentially detonating a bioclock in his chest at a specific time that will cause him to throw up copious amounts of bright pink fluid that'll then infect everybody in the immediate vicinity.
Yeah, and it wasn't an arms conference or something stupid.
It was something ironic.
Yeah. I mean, it's very clearly it's done because you need to have a ticking clock for them to get to.
But at the same time...
No, I'm not going to dispute you at all. It's
we're going with virulence of... Would it really infect that many people that easily? Wouldn't it be better just kind of infecting himself, like in the smallpox one, walking around the conference coughing on people?
Yes, or I was going to say throwing himself into the nearest reservoir.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, that we came up with while watching it is it's hard to get round that if you were writing this without the constraints of Fox saying you can't use Lone Gunmen anymore, it would make far more sense for Morris Fletcher to pull that fire alarm and trap himself in that room with the virus.
Given that we've had almost a redemptive arc for Morris in this episode?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think one of the problems with Morris, especially using him in Lone Gunmen, is yes and no, because that's one of the frustrating things about Dreamland, is he got his redemptive arc in Dreamland.
And then it was erased.
Yeah, and so this is shot 2, and he does appear to be genuinely on the level at the end of the episode.
There is a nice moment in the episode where he has almost a redemptive moment with Langley, who's talking about, the good death, essentially.
Yeah.
About how you can live on past death. He uses the Ramones as an example. Joey Ramone, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the Ramones.
no,
but
fine.
It's why he considers Joey Ramone a hero.
Yeah.
Because essentially, although he's died, his message lives on. And Morris seems to take this to heart, which feels like it would be the better redemptive arc if Morris was the one to sacrifice himself at the end.
Exactly.
And not for the Lone Gunmen to have their Wrath of Khan moment at the very end.
Actually, yes, it is very Wrath of Khan, isn't it?
Knowingly, that wasn't scripted either. That was the actors that decided they would do the homage to Wrath of Khan at the end, with them talking to Jimmy through the glass panel.
Fair enough. I mean, okay, I'll give you kudos for trying to do that, but it's still emotional stakes is they don't have enough time to make it work. Like Star Trek 2 does keep that scene running for quite a while to actually make sure it works, and it's like, what, 10 seconds of dialogue, and then it just flares to white and you just cut to them in the cemetery.
It's also iconic. I mean, even people who aren't familiar with Star Trek know that scene from Wrath of Khan because you've seen it redone a lot.
Knowing that 20th Century Fox said you can't use Lone Gunmen anymore does make sense, because I would suspect that at some point they were going to put Morris Fletcher in that room. And they had to put it the way around, and it doesn't work as a result of it.
Yeah. I also really dislike the ending, and even Spotnitz, who likes the episode on the whole, wishes they could have ended it on a laugh.
Yeah.
To end it on one of the
bleak.
darkest moments the X-Files ever had, of the funeral in Arlington.
Yeah. And the fact that there seems to be no one there. How they framed those shots, it seems to be there's no one who showed up to their funeral. They have no friends.
Or family.
Or family. All they have is Kimmy, Eves, Jimmy, various FBI staff.
And at the very least, Byers has a dad.
Yeah, who's still alive. And I do think as well, I mean, I understand clearly there was some scheduling conflict. The fact that Scully is bailing this episode feels really off. The fact that she's just... Because at one point, I was sure I remembered her being in it, but we were running out of episode, and it's like, does she show up? Because it's like the very last scene of this episode is her only appearance. And given Mulder is not around...
I feel Scully's send-off to them was a bit muted as well, because Scully in particular has quite a strong relationship with Frohike.
Yeah.
We even saw things like when Scully was in her coma, Frohike was the one who showed up to sit next to her.
And he also came round drunk when they thought Mulder was dead.
Yeah. The two of them, strangely, do have this odd little friendship that's quite cute.
Oh, we don't get a resolution to that?
No.
Or any kind of send-off from that aspect of it?
It would have been nice if it hadn't, or at least hadn't just been Jimmy present when they actually got infected. You needed Scully on the other side of that glass to say goodbye to them.
Yes, that would have been much better. I mean, I think as well we're kind of hamstrung by having Doggett and Reyes there. It's like, Doggett has a bit of a history with them now, but Reyes, I still maintain, has not been introduced to them. They just showed up at the door one episode.
Like, okay.
Reyes, come on. Who are these three? It's a deeply flawed episode, sadly, but there are a lot of sharks.
It also did not have a very good reception, as you can imagine.
Yeah, well, this is my point about Millennium is, who are you trying to appeal to? Because it's not an X-Files episode, despite having Doggett and Reyes in. And it's not a Lone Gunmen episode, because that series doesn't really have fans. I know you're out there, but, you're not in the same category, are you? Okay,
yeah, so the critical reception at the time, let's say it was mixed to very bad.
I'm kind of impressed as mixed.
Mm-hmm. So, one of the ones I found cited was someone called Aaron Kinney from Salon magazine, who I don't think I've actually used before.
No?
But he called it cheesy melodrama, deathly slow pacing, and a lack of coherence.
Yeah, I'd go for that one. I mean, it does seem to just keep changing plot partway through.
Sherman and Pearson, the Wanting to Believe guys who we've quoted a lot, they gave it 1 out of 5.
Very fair.
In particular, they were critical about the ending and said it was such a bland way of dying, and even the fact that for a moment they felt that they kind of just missed the point.
Yeah, actually, picking up on that, I would say that's got to be one of the other things that bugs you about it, is it's not a Lone Gunmen plot. It's not a Lone Gunmen TV series plot, and it's not a Lone Gunmen episode plot.
No, that's true.
This is an X-Files plot, sure, but not one that would involve either of them. I don't know how you'd actually kill them off in a actual Lone Gunmen plot done either way, but this isn't it. And that's part of why it doesn't feel right.
Their final conclusion, Sherman and Pearson, was that both the Lone Gunmen and the viewer deserved better.
Absolutely.
And our more contemporary critic that we've seen a lot lately is M.A. Krang, the denying the truth, revisiting the X-Files after 9/11 guy.
Yeah.
He didn't like the goofy tone that the whole episode had, because he felt that this has been a very dark, serious season, and it just felt really out of place.
Yeah, and I think, again, that's the problem of your trying to resolve the Lone Gunmen TV series, which had a tone that was definitely diverged off.
It should be noted that there have been a couple of daft episodes this season as well, like Lord of the Flies. There are other goofy episodes, but not quite to the degree of this one. And in particular, if you hadn't seen The Lone Gunmen, that tone would feel especially jarring.
Yes. And, just the Lone Gunmen are back, and suddenly there's a history I haven't been aware of. And also the revelation that I still annoys me. I thought it came in sooner, but it's later. Is Kimmy saying, "Oh, they sold everything to try and find Eves and Jimmy"? What? Who? Why would you do this?
So when you mentioned it, that was the first time I really thought of, oh yeah, their office is a bit bare.
Yeah.
With like the empty racking behind him and stuff like that.
But then it's the whole, they've given up on publishing their newspaper, which is like their entire world.
Mm.
To try and track down someone who, if they run away from you... Well, I mean, again, I think that comes back to our problem of how the last episode, All About Eves, ended and how this episode resumes, or even how season 9 resumes.
True.
Of if they've been hunting for people, that's never come across. But also, these are the people that Scully left William with for that 30 seconds before they got kidnapped again. It's people who have sold everything to try and find 2 people who are missing.
True.
I don't like it.
No. And you tried so hard to be positive as well. You hid it so well.
I did. I mean, I've got my positive ones ready for the next one, if you want to move on.
Okay, shall we move on to William then?
We can move on to William. So, William, directed by David Duchovny, which was a shock. Story by David Duchovny, Chris Carter, and Frank Spotnitz. Teleplay by Chris Carter. And first broadcast on the 20th of April 2002. This is one of the weird ones where basically there is a guest cast, but they don't seem to have done anything of note. And it was really a shock to see second build were the twins who play Baby William.
Yeah, that's true.
That was very weird. To see the nominal child star who plays a baby being second build on the guest cast is something I've not seen before.
No, it's a very good point.
That was very weird.
If anything, they become the introducing credit.
Yes. And we can say it's very clear, and the synopsis will make clear as well, the part of that is because one major guest star they had to leave off because it would give things away.
I'll give them credit for the restraint of not mentioning that guest star, because, as we'll see when we discuss it, they do actually hide them pretty well.
They do. I mean, it makes me think of Babylon 5, because that series keeps coming back. Basically, when Babylon 5 was being broadcast, there was a worry because Babylon 5 didn't have the same kind of restraint and would often just put the guest stars on the opening credits as you would do normally.
Okay.
And sometimes that was, they weren't going to show up until the end of the episode. It was going to be a big shock when they came in. So it's like saying, oh yeah, they're in the episode, just ruined the surprise.
Oh my god, Globaz has been alive the entire time.
Yeah. And so some people were recommending like just sticking a bit of paper at the bottom of the screen for the first 5 minutes until the credits are gone and you can take it off again. Just so you don't know that, X is going to come back in again.
The more I hear about the series, the more fascinated I am.
We'll watch it at some point. I don't know how well it holds up anymore, but it's Lord of the Rings in space. It's interesting. Even
enough.
If the last 2 series didn't go to plan because of cancellations and shifting networks, which just threw a whole load of the plans out. Okay, would you like to tell us about William for the last time? We wish.
I shall, and I'm heavily ad-libbing this from Wikipedia. In our opening sting of the episode, we are introduced to a couple called the Vanderkamps, who we see are adopting a baby, and it quickly reveals that baby is highly likely to be William Scully. We jump back a week in time, in which we see Scully taking William out of the car while a stranger watches from the shadows. A little later on, Doggett is attacked inside the X-Files office by the same man. Doggett does manage to subdue him, and it's revealed that the stranger has horrible burn scars across his entire body. Scully speaks with the man and attests to the fact that his burns appear to be genuine and recent. The stranger claims that the burns are caused by an injection he was given as some part of alien testing. He also reveals the fact that he knows Mulder, and indeed seems to know where Mulder currently is. Mulder has apparently sent him to the FBI to retrieve certain files, but Scully believes him to be lying. The man reveals the fact that there is now a new conspiracy that's formed because of the end of the previous one. This new one is hidden deep within the government, and the conspirators involved are all alien. Doggett starts to theorise that the man might actually be Mulder, despite obvious physiological differences. Scully is less convinced, but still takes the man to her house to give him the files he's requested. While at the house, William starts to cry and is only calmed down when the scarred man picks him up and cradles him. In the meantime, Skinner and Doggett meet to discuss the idea that the man might actually be Mulder. Skinner points out the many inconsistencies in Doggett's reasoning, including the fact that the man is shorter and has less muscle tone. However, he agrees for a DNA test to be taken. The scarred man discusses William with Scully and reveals that he is part alien and she's being used to raise him. Reyes and Doggett arrive to tell Scully that they've had the man's DNA tested and it's a perfect match to Mulder's, but Scully still refuses to believe this. While they are discussing this, we see the stranger slip into William's room with a syringe. William suddenly begins to cry in pain, alerting the agents to the fact that something has happened to him and they see blood on his sheets. However, the scarred man manages to sneak out the room before they can get there. Reyes and Scully rush the baby into a hospital, while Doggett manages to apprehend the scarred man and find his syringe. Although William is fully examined by the doctors, they reveal that there is nothing wrong with him, except for the fact he seems to have an elevated amount of iron in his blood. Scully interrogates the scarred man at the FBI about his motives, and it's revealed that he's not Mulder after all. He's actually Jeffrey Spender, the former FBI agent who we last saw back in Season 6 when he was shot and supposedly killed by the cigarette-smoking man. The DNA evidence has all been proven positive because Spender is Mulder's half-brother. Spender admits that he has largely been lying up to this point just so he could gain access to William and inject him with a syringe containing magnetite. This is designed to dampen William's natural abilities, removing his psychic powers and turning him into a normal child. Because the aliens need William with his powers to successfully invade, they have now lost him. However, he believes that William is not safe and the conspirators will always keep pursuing him, despite what Spender has done and likely not believing he has done it. Spender was only acting out of hatred for the cigarette-smoking man, his father, since the new conspiracy was created by Cancer Man after the alien rebels burnt the original group. Spender's words deeply trouble Scully, and she decides that the only way she can protect William is to give him up for adoption so he can have a better life. We then jump back to the opening sting to see the Vanderkamps tucking their new son into bed. William looks up at his mobile, but it appears that he can no longer move it with his mind, which is what we saw him doing back in Nothing Important Happened Today.
Thank you. Okay, positives.
Go on.
That burn makeup is incredible.
It looks so real.
It does look very real. And I would say incredible kudos for the effect of it and actually hiding the fact that it's Chris Owens under there. Because when we were talking about this episode way back, I was sure he wasn't in this episode. And then it turned out, nope, that's him. The entire time.
It's incredible because not only does that not look like Chris Owens, especially with the kind of raspy voice as well, but at certain angles, he really does look like Mulder.
Yeah. Well, there's a few angles where if you know that's Chris Owens, you can say, oh, yeah, actually, yes, that is him. There's a few shots where it's, if you know what you're looking for, it's very obviously him in makeup.
I just think they've done a great job of like rounding out his face so he looks more like David Duchovny. It's fantastic.
It's really good work.
It's one of the best practical effects I think we've seen in the X-Files.
Yes, I'd absolutely say that's absolutely phenomenally done. I would say Mulder's cameo, if you want to call it that, is incredible restraint. It's weird, but it's restrained.
The reflection in Scully's eye.
Yeah.
Interestingly, this story is, as you mentioned, written by David Duchovny. His original just pitch of it was that Scully is approached by a disfigured man who seems to know her and knows a lot about Mulder. Chris Carter mandated the fact that William also had to be given up for adoption within the writing of the episode, which is something that, interestingly, Chris Carter and Spotnitz were all for. Gillian Anderson, David Duchovny and John Shiban all thought it was a terrible idea because they were thinking, as parents themselves, the fact that this doesn't seem realistic for a parent to do this at this point when she's already had so many ordeals where she's not given him up.
Yeah. Well, I say, but put a pin in that because we're going to come back to that in a second.
But also, Duchovny, when they approached him, he approached them to write the episode. They also said, hey, do you want to direct it? And he said, oh, I'll do more than that. I'll appear in the episode too. And they convinced him to put a pin in it because at this point they'd learnt that the X-Files would not be continuing past season 9. So they said, well, if you're willing to reappear, would you mind holding off and appearing in the finale instead? Which is why you get David Duchovny in the final episode.
So, I mean, yes, the cameo restraint is pretty good. There's probably a middling comment of, I gotta wonder how much they were toying with fans a bit of this, because you see the guest cast for the episode. Duchovny's not in title sequence because he never has been for this. He's not some guest cast, But he's then got 2 different credits where it's a case of he was around and on set the entire time.
Yeah.
He could easily show up. So I imagine a contingent of the fandom were like watching with bated breath the entire time for him to come in. And he doesn't, really. I'd say the acting is pretty good, I think.
I think Chris Owens does a great job.
Chris Owens does pretty good. I'm pretty sure Gillian Anderson does a pretty good job with a inexplicably written part. So it's in the nicest possible way to say that.
I've criticised Gillian Anderson for a while now of it's often shows of that period when a strong female character gives birth, they just become a mother and lose everything else about them. We have that issue here. This is just Scully is a mom and that's it.
She's doing the best with what she's got, but it's not what she's strong with.
No.
It's not what she's good at. So I'll give her some praise for that, and I'm sure there's going to be something else. I like the consistency. At least the X-Files office is still, in a quiet downstairs basement room. There's all the files everywhere. It's the same old place it always has been.
I will say for Scully's acting as well, just to go back to that now I'm thinking about it, you really do have a loss of Scully the skeptic that's really obvious here, in the fact that Scully has always been a firm believer in hard science, and they present her with the unequivocal proof of that DNA is 100% Mulder's.
Yes.
And her response is, no, it can't be.
Yeah.
Which, it's twofold. It's either Scully written poorly, or it's showing how much Scully has come, because Scully will now not necessarily just grasp the empirical truth.
True. And I think, though, if it was the latter, then her character's been damaged, because that's too far for her. You can sway her to believing in aliens because she's seen empirical proof.
I'd also like to question is, how the hell is that DNA 100% Mulder's? Based on how viruses worked in the last episode, how does DNA work in the X-Files at this stage?
Well, if I can stop being positive and move into the critical phase of this.
But he's...
Yeah, no.
He's Mulder's, half-brother, step-brother? Half-brother.
Half-brother. Different mothers.
But for it to be identical, you have to be Mulder's clone or fraternal twin.
Yeah. And it would have to be fraternal twin, yeah. Now you've got me. I mean, the absolute best you've got is in the real world, which the X-Files has a passing relationship with at times. DNA testing, like all testing, will have an error rate.
That's one hell of an error rate.
It's a hell of an error rate. False positives, I think, are harder to get than just a complete mismatch. So yeah, the crux of the episode doesn't work, and it's very obvious to me that's only done to continue the tension. Because you've missed Chris Owens off the guest list and you've got David Duchovny as a director, so he's there, the idea it could be Mulder is presented to you the entire way through.
Oh, I've realised another hypothetical way. I've got a conspiracy theory for you.
Go on then.
It means that Cassandra Spender and Tina Mulder are actually twins.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
No. Basically. I don't know where to best to start with this, because I think one thing we could definitely say is the ending doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, actually, no, the intro doesn't make a lot of sense. The ending doesn't make a lot of sense. Most of the middle doesn't make a lot of sense. Because some of it is the time constraints of this episode feel too brief. Because I refuse to believe William can be given up for adoption and adopted in that short a time period. I'm pretty sure that's not how adoption works.
Within the week.
Within a week.
Here's a baby. Babies are supposed to be the ones that get snapped up fast.
Even then, you've got... But I'm pretty sure adopting a child is a very long, drawn-out process from application to getting the child.
Oh yes, I expect so.
Longer than a week.
I'd say it has to be to get all those... what your American equivalent of a CBT check is. And that sort of thing.
Background checks, you've got to prove all kinds of things. I know with older children, you've got to spend an amount of time with them before the adoption can go through. I suppose babies are a bit more malleable than that one. But yeah, I refuse to believe it can be that fast.
Scully does work in the government, and it could be something that Skinner has fast-tracked for us somehow.
Yeah, but then let's interrogate this bit a bit. So she's giving... I mean, every time I try to think on it, it breaks down. Because, okay, Scully has finally decided that she cannot protect William, so she's given up for adoption. On the say-so of Jeffrey Spender, a man who Canceman failed to shoot in the face and looks like he shot in the throat. Because he told him I got it completely the wrong angle.
It's also on the word of a man who's a notorious coward and yes man.
Yes, and who has lied, he's been on the wrong side, very briefly changed sides before he was shot. And dead, as far as we were aware. I mean, I think that's a problem. We have no idea how he's still around.
It's also, of all of the characters, Scully actually, I think, had arguably the worst relationship with Spender because she hated him.
Yes. Yeah, so this is a very weird thing. And I think also the fact that he's doing it purely out of spite doesn't help.
Oh, no, I can relate.
No, I can relate to it. I can relate to that for Spender. For Scully, the fact it's been done out of spite, I feel would be causing her problems.
Yeah, her, I feel it should cause more problems. Spender, it feels entirely on the nose that he would do all this just to screw one over Cancer Man one last time.
Yeah, but I think the problem is that this episode should be at the start of season 9. It shouldn't be here at the end. And I know why it's here at the end. And we can't talk about it yet so much, but we know the point of this episode will be ruined quite shortly. But we know why it's been done. Because William has to be taken off the board because you can't leave him as a loose end.
Yeah. It's the unfortunateness of the fact that they now know they've only got a few episodes to wrap things up.
Yeah.
Anything we had planned for our alien baby plot now has to be scrapped.
Yeah, we can't let him... He cannot be allowed to remain as he is. The problems crop up with the whole... It was that easy to just suppress this part of him, apparently.
With magnetite, we've spoken about magnetite and how it exists naturally within the human body anyway. Yeah. But
it's the fact that he could... a tiny injection like that. That was not...
I don't know, that was a pretty big needle.
It's a pretty big needle, but it's still not a lot of stuff.
How much you can fit in a normal syringe is what? 10 millilitres, 20 millilitres? They're not big.
They're not big. So whatever he's put into him is not a lot, and I don't know if... The X-Files is bad with explaining how some people know things, but how Spender found out and got hold of this and all the rest of it and knew it would work.
We have only encountered magnetite once in the X-Files, and that's when I forget what henchman it was, got sucked into the vein.
Yeah. Well, it was the guy, it was, Locke from Lost.
Yeah.
In his, fourth appearance in the series.
They all have a name, though.
They do.
Like Crew Cut Man or whatever.
Shadow Man or something?
Was he Shadow Man? He had a name, definitely. Had a name.
Yeah, magnetite is not something... I thought it came up more, and it's barely relevant to anything.
Plot point in season 10 comic.
It says it all, really.
Our non-canon comic we keep referring to. Yeah.
But I understand why it's been done now, but unfortunately, that doesn't justify why it didn't happen earlier. And also why... I mean, the thing that really bugs me is it's... you can't predict him. No one will believe that William is now just a normal human. And that apparently is enough to change Scully's mind. When she was happy enough to guard William in the past, I mean, we went ad nauseum. Scully and William should be in hiding. Mulder should be still here. The fact it's the wrong way around is baffling.
Let's point out some reasons why we didn't think William needed protection in the past. So when William was born and a bunch of alien... not bounty hunters, the alien super soldiers appeared, showed they could not be subdued and could totally take that baby if they wanted to, and just stood around like it was the second coming.
Yeah, and I'm still so annoyed that I got that wrong.
Point 2, when human crazy UFO cult, which had no aliens and was just humans, managed to kidnap said baby.
Yep. That wasn't enough either.
Yep. But Jeffrey Spender says that your baby is now perfectly normal and theoretically safe, but that's not good enough. That's reason to put the baby into hiding.
It will never be enough. I mean, I kind of want to say I want to know what the plan for William was. At the same time, I'm fairly certain that they didn't have a plan for William either.
I've got to admit, I haven't found one.
I don't think there was one, to be honest. I think he was a possible thing they could pick up as they needed to.
William is the new purity control.
Yeah, he'll have some relevance.
That we occasionally tried to make purity relevant and tie it up with other loose ends, but we never really got a satisfying kind of explanation about purity and purity control in there.
No, particularly after the revelations of the Erlenmeyer flask with the whole, you have DNA base codes that don't exist on Earth. And we've just really not relate that one anymore. I mean, I still think, going back to your thing of behind the scenes of Duchovny, Anderson, and Shaban saying, don't do this, it doesn't make any sense. is, yeah, I'm not a parent, and I'm gonna go with those three. In their reaction makes a lot more sense.
I've got to admit, I agree with them. I know it's one of these things where you could easily say, as a non-parent, do you really understand? And it's a valid point.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with the parents on this. This doesn't feel natural. Or more so, it feels like if you were going to have given up William, you would have done so a lot earlier than this. This shouldn't be the straw that breaks the horse's back.
Yeah, nothing important happens today should have been about William's adoption, if you're going to pull this stunt.
So, would you like me to tell you about some of the critics at the time for this episode?
Yeah, go on. I mean, I have other things, but we'll do the critics.
Oh, okay. Do you want to do your bits first?
No. We could do it in any order. We haven't got a set format for this.
No. Okay, so the results of this one, it did have a slightly better Nielsen rating than the last episode, it must be admitted.
Well, okay, I'm going to go on a limb here, and I bet you the advertising said, mystery man comes into the FBI, knows stuff about Scully, and David Duchovny has a cameo. And that would have done everything.
I don't entirely know how the advertising worked for this one. I haven't actually come across what the TV segment was for it.
I would bet they're playing up Duchovny being around.
Like our last one, the TV segment largely used Morris Fletcher's voiceover in the style of Dreamland to kind of explain things. But no, for this one, I didn't actually manage to find the TV segment. But let's say it's more absolute on the fence for this one. It's really, really mixed, polarizing reviews for it.
That's unusual, I would say.
And when I say polarizing, I mean that everyone essentially said a good thing and a bad thing about it. But so, in our usual pool of critics, we have, let's start with Sherman and Pearson, our wanting to believe guys, because they've been stalwarts throughout, and they're usually pretty fair, to be fair.
They are.
3 out of 5.
Okay.
Their major criticism, as always, was that if Scully was going to give the baby up for protection, she would have done it after she was kidnapped by the UFO cult.
Yeah. At the latest.
However, they did think Chris Owens did a really good job in his role in this episode, and I agree. I have absolutely no complaints. He is great.
He is.
Tom Kesenich in Examinations, again, was not sold on Scully would put William up for adoption at this, but he said that David Duchovny's directing of the episode was very good.
I'm always really unsure how to actually review that kind of thing, but yeah.
I'm always kind of a fan of dialogue-heavy episodes, but I felt this one was a bit repetitive. It treaded the same ground too much.
Well, this is one of the things I was going to say. It's that problem of repetitive structure of you keep taking Spender to Scully's apartment, and then he ran away, picked them out, and got captured and brought back again.
Yeah, I was thinking the X-Files uses a lot of bottle episodes to save money, as we've talked about in the past. I saw a great horror film recently called The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which is still on Netflix at the moment if you want to see it, which essentially is a bottle episode. It all takes place in a morgue. Yeah. And it's gripping. Yes. You do not look away, even though ultimately very little happens and essentially they move between about 3 different rooms over the entire thing. But you're on the edge of your seat, you're not sure what's going to happen. Mysteries come up and they are resolved as they go along and things like that. It's very frightening, very intense, and it's one of the best horror films I've seen recently. That's how you kind of do a bottle episode.
Yes. We don't have inexplicable chase sequences in the middle of it.
No. And last of all, we've got our modern critic, M.A. Krang, denying the truth, revisiting the X-Files after 9/11. He was the only one I saw that actually said he liked the fact that they resolved William's plot. However, he didn't like the absolute ending because he said it was a sappy conclusion.
Yes. I mean, we were unsure watching it of, does William interfere with the mobile, because it's really ambiguous how they filmed it, which I think is intentional.
Yeah. A lot of the things I've read seems to infer the fact it's showing you that he doesn't have powers anymore.
Yeah, I think that was the intent.
I thought it was one of those things where it cuts out just as maybe you can think, all right, was it about to move?
It's the spiral in Inception about to falter.
Yes. The spinning top.
The spinning top.
Yeah.
The totem.
Yeah, good simile, yeah.
I think the problem is we're looking at this unfortunately across 2 time spans, because on broadcast, you're going to come down on William's out. He's now dispensed with. From our viewpoint, having got to the end of the TV series, we know, William...
It's a plot that's going to be revisited, let's say.
We can't discount William just yet, even though we would like you to. I wonder about the mystery of Spender's identity. because I know I can understand what they're doing. Again, a lot comes down to Duchovny's directing the episode, so he's around. I mean, this is like Frohike in Lone Gunmen. He's basically just on set all the time anyway, so him cameoing is no big deal. So the same is true for Mulder in this one, where you have David Duchovny around. Getting him into makeup and everything else is not going to take very long, and you can just push him onto set.
Mm.
I mean, I think in his brief cameo, he's just wearing a white t-shirt, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's probably what he was wearing. He was working on it, wasn't it? Like, do we just film this one bit, Dave, and then you can go back to directing? It's fine. At the same time, though, I think you pointed out the best point is that while they've done an ample thing of making Spender look like Duchovny in certain lights and from certain angles, you run into the problem of his build is wrong. He's too short. And they even say that in the episode, and people keep trying to work around it.
I think I said that to you right at the start of he's at least a foot shorter than David Duchovny.
And it's when they say, "Oh, he's twisted wizard like an old man." It's like he is, but that what being elderly does to you.
I could buy that. Let's say after Mulder left, he's been tortured.
Again.
He's heavily emaciated. He's lost muscle mass. He's lost bone density. Perhaps he would still be approximately 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
He might lose a bit of height if he's lost bone density. He's not going to lose a foot.
No, but he's basically going to be skeletal, isn't he?
I am thinking of when you look at people who've undergone severe malnutrition, like, say, concentration camp survivors.
Yeah.
Where they're not necessarily skeletal, but they look older than they are and emaciated. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's part of why I think it's difficult, because I think even when watching it the first time, I didn't remotely believe that was Mulder in any scene. And the episode really tries to make you buy it. And Doggett is just so fixated that it is, and everyone else seems to be much more, well, it can't be.
It's even Scully makes some very valid points in the episode, like the fact that Mulder would have known that the files weren't in the office.
Yeah. I mean, and we could also just put a break there and just say, in terms of illegal things that Scully has done, this ranks pretty low given she shot that guy in custody in her apartment.
Oh, that was fine.
That was fine. But stealing government records tends to get you thrown in court.
I'm pretty sure you're supposed to keep them fairly secure.
Yeah. Any kind of government things, even though the X-Files would probably it could be used as toilet paper if you wanted.
We have seen in the X-Files things like Mulder having them on his lap on a plane ride and things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it was different in the days before computers. Now everything I imagine is digitized.
And then, Scully makes the point of, if that was Mulder, he would know the files were not in the FBI office. So,
true.
I don't know, it feels like the episode kind of just undercuts its own tension at multiple points. And I think the other point we would get across is, okay, so that's Mulder. Doggett, do you want to say, why did Mulder feel the need to beat me up when I'm clearly John Doggett, who works in this office, who you've met, had a bit of an antagonistic relationship with, but are okay as last we left it?
We had that lovely bonding experience on the offshore oil rig.
We don't talk about the offshore oil rig. The tension feels weird because I don't think you can really believe that can be Mulder. I mean, you're meant to think. I mean, were you convinced at any point that it could be Mulder? I mean,
well, I kind of knew he wasn't.
We're talking like back in the first broadcast.
Back in the first broadcast, I did not, as far as I'm aware, I did not think it was Mulder. I didn't guess it was Spender, though.
Well, no, I mean, you wouldn't. I mean, I think there's a note somewhere that he'd been written out back in One Sun, and that was 3 seasons ago, and no one even breathed the idea that he could be alive.
I mean, it looked pretty damningly like he was shot in the face in One Sun.
Yeah, but again, we had those, watching the footage, it's like, Cancerman, do you want to raise the pistol up a bit so you do shoot him right through the face and not through the throat?
We know that Cancerman can be sentimental, though. There is a possibility that Cancerman didn't shoot to kill.
It's true. You do go to this question of, okay, so Spender has been horribly tortured by the conspirators. No, the conspirators.
Who are all aliens,
aliens, I suppose,
so he's been experimented on by aliens.
It does feel a bit like desperation, though, to just sort of say, oh, it's the aliens have a new conspiracy. They need William to do it, and they're replacing people in government. And you will say, yeah, you've never really bottomed out how the super soldiers worked, have you?
It's not entirely sure how the conspiracy works with William, because we did hear the prophecy with him previously.
Yeah, and we haven't returned to that either. Like, what on earth was even going on with the prophecy.
The prophecy which kind of inferred that either William or Mulder has to die.
Yeah. For reasons.
Alien reasons.
I mean, it feels like, I mean, on the one hand, then you've got to say, if William is meant to be tying up William to sort of just shut off this stuff before you get into conspiracy, it feels really kind of off to then sort of just say, oh yes, there's a new conspiracy in the government, just like the old one, but different. And featuring none of the same people. And doesn't feature Cancer Man.
I said Cancer Man set it up in this episode because that's why we were spiting him.
So. Oh yeah, he did create the second conspiracy. And you want to sort of just say, look, if you watch everything from when the conspirators got burned to present day, Cancer Man kind of stole Mulder's brain and put it in his own brain. And then I don't think anything came of that.
True.
I don't know. Do we have much else for William? Because
I think you pretty much covered everything. As I said, it's a hard one to talk about just because we know this isn't the end of the William subplot. Though it is kind of the end of it up until season 11, I think?
10.
Oh, does he come back in 10?
Well, no, he doesn't, but then Scully starts wittering about him.
Fair enough.
We have to talk about Release and Sunshine Days.
I love Sunshine Days.
I love Sunshine Days. I think it was one of our episodes that was on perpetual cycling in our big playlist of all the X-Files episodes we liked.
Oh, best of X-Files, yeah.
And, we're not going to comment on what that means about Release being there in the middle and not counting. If you'd like to get hold of us and, as a parent, explain why William is the best episode ever.
I don't think anyone said that.
No. Our email address is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media, and please do hook me up if you'd like me to promote anything at the start of the show, if it's X-Files related, of course. You can find us on Twitter and Tumblr at GetStrange42, on Mastodon at GetStrange42@universedon.com, and on Facebook, where you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch Podcast. Also, if you're not sick of my voice right now, I also stream live on Twitch TV. My main channel is live Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 PM GMT and Saturdays at 5 PM GMT. At the moment, I'm playing Yakuza 5 Remastered and Night in the Woods, though by the time this airs, I might have finished Night in the Woods, in which case I'll be moving on to Bloodborne.
Woo! We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsgettingstrange, where for as little as $3 a month, you can have access to our bonus episodes, including our Let's Play of the X-Files game called The X-Files Game from 1998, starring Craig Wilmore, who we managed to kill a few times.
And somehow it wasn't from climbing that really shaky telegraph pole.
I'm so amazed that they were left that in, the obvious bad stunt that wasn't cleared or made safe or anything. Oh, wow. Our theme music is envisioned by Kevin MacLeod. You can find it on comptech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember,
the truth is out there.